Such an honor to have ensign the first astromycologist of the universe, Paul Stamets.
Well, greetings. I'm honored to be here. This will be a little bit different, I assure you. We face a crisis across the world. The Earth is hurting, and we need to help heal her. So I hope this talk will forever change your lives, to give you actionable solutions that you can put into place, every and each one of you. Now, I'm going to talk rather quickly, because I have a lot of material to convey. But first I want to talk about my hat. I like my hat. It's made from a mushroom called amadou. It's a hard birch polypores made by some ladies in Transylvania. This mushroom allowed for the portability of fire. There's no doubt that we all came from Africa 40,000 years ago. We migrated into Europe. We discovered something new called winter. Oops. This mushroom allowed for the portability of fire. You can hollow this mushroom out, put embers of fire in it, and carry it for days. I suggest to you that this mushroom was not only essential for human survival for thousands of years, but this mushroom may be absolutely critical for human survival in the very near future. So, digest this slide. This is basically epitomizes my talk. But here we go. What a long, strange trip it's been to the paradigm shift. We are now at the paradigm shift. And it's time for us to immerse into the microverse. Now, my partner, Dusty, and I spend a lot of time in the Old Growth Forest. This is where I go to church on Sundays. But I'm going to focus my attention on a near-event crisis of enormous proportions, far more serious than climate chaos. Is the loss of bees around the world. It's a threat to worldwide food biosecurity. There's 81 million beehives in the world, China, Turkey, United States, Iran, and Argentina being the primary ones. But most of you may not know that the bees are responsible for more than 30% of our food. Tomatoes, hay, alfalfa, all of our nuts and fruits. When you see a bee on a flower, it's the last 9 days of their lives. In fact, bees used to fly for 9 days to pollinate. Now they only fly an average of 4. The lifespan has been cut in half. So here is your food selection at Whole Foods, with bees. This is your food selection without bees. Looking at what's called colony collapse disorder in the United States. This is the average rate of loss of honeybee hives. Look at Oklahoma, nearly 84%. Imagine if you were a cattle rancher and you lost 84% of your cattle, your sheep, your chickens, economically and emotionally devastating. The worldwide phenomenon is now spreading, or has spread. Colony collapse is happening, and now the wild bees are disappearing faster than we can find them. Wild bees get more than 80% of the pollination benefits that farmers experience or benefit from, and they're disappearing faster than they can be counted because they're oftentimes ground-based, and they're called solitary bees with very small colonies. President Obama identified as a national priority some of the stressors that are causing bees to decline. Neonicotinoids by far is one major factor, now been banned in Europe. But as bees decline, biodiversity declines, food costs escalate, poverty, disease, and the potential for social unrest, even terrorism, increases. So, a series of very bizarre things happened in my life. When it's strung together, you will understand how I came up with an epiphany. Now, I was cultivating mushrooms in my garden, the garden giant mushroom, Stropharia rugosa. I had 2 beehives in 1984, and in July, in the morning, I go out to water my mushroom patch, and I was shocked to see there were bees all over my wood chips, moving the wood chips aside to find the root-like structure of the mushrooms, the mycelium underneath. From dawn to dusk, for 40 days, there's a continuous convoy of bees from my beehives to my mushroom patch, and literally shrunk the mycelium from about 12 inches down to about 4, sucking these little extracellular droplets from the mycelium. Well, I published this in Harrowsmith magazine in 1988. I put it in one of my books in 1993. I thought, well, I'm getting the sweet sugars from the exudates of the mycelium as it breaks down wood. Thereupon, I forgot about it. 1987, the varroa mite started spreading across the world. It came to the United States from Asia. And this virus now, of particular concern is the deformed wing virus. Numerous articles have identified in the past 2 years the #1 nail in the coffin of the bees is the deformed wing virus, being injected by varroa mites that are like a pancake on the back of a bee, constantly injecting a slew of viruses, the deformed wing virus being one of the most greatest of concern. 100% of the bees worldwide now are infected. 100% of wild bees are infected. This lessens the tensile strength of their wings, it malforms the wings so they can't fly. There's a global pandemic of the deformed wing virus vectored by the varroa mites. The varroa mites are being controlled by a miticide that's been approved for treatment of ticks called amitraz by the cattle industry. Off-label use for the bee industry. They used to soak the beehives twice a day in amitraz, or twice per season in amitraz, just 4 or 5 years ago, and now the treatment is 7 to 9 times. The mites have developed resistance. This is not a solution. I spent a lot of time in the old growth forest, as I mentioned, bear scratch trees. I've noticed bear scratches for years, and when bear scratch trees, then resins come out, and bees are attracted to the resins, and they gather the resins to make propolis, to seal the cracks in their beehives. I'm walking through the old growth forest, deep in the South Fork of the Hoh River, in Olympic National Forest. I come around a corner with Dusty, and I see this bear scratch. The best photograph of bear scratch I've ever seen. The bear comes up like, so I told Dusty, wow, this is really interesting because, you know, our neighbor killed 400 bears. He killed 400 bears under contract with the state of Washington because in Washington state, the timber industry harvest funded the school systems. Bear scratch trees, polypore mushrooms were introduced. The trees died, so it threatened the budget, supposedly, of the school system, so they killed all the bears they could. Terrible. So I said, if that's true, let's come back in 2 years and we bushwhacked it. I orienteer, I warn you now, be careful going out and hike with me because I go off a trail all the time. It's not really getting lost if you find the trail eventually, in my opinion. So we orienteered, we found the bear scratch, and sure enough, the polypore mushroom, the red-dotted polypore, was there. I go to bed. I have a dream. I have an epiphany. Many of you have seen my TED and TED Med talks where I work with the BioShield program at the U.S. Defense Department. You can Google my name, Stamets, smallpox, and NPR, National Public Radio, interviews with the Deputy Director of the FDA, the head of the BioShield program, etc. I've made many inroads on antiviral properties of mushrooms against herpes, pox viruses, and flu viruses. I have a dream, and I have an epiphany, an awakening dream. I highly recommend this. And that time between unconsciousness and consciousness, before you get the regular neurological pattern set up for the day, spend some time in just random access thinking. And so I started making micro-honey. This is mycelium that is grown on rice. It's fermented, then made into a luxurious, delicious honey. And I contacted the University of California, Davis, and I learned very quickly, you never speak to another scientist you've never met with an opening remarks, I had a dream. I was at the TED conference. I was told to call Washington State University by a friend of mine. I talked to Steve Shepard. I said, Steve, give me 5 minutes. And before I could even get finished, he said, don't go anywhere else. We want to work with you. We started growing cage studies of 20 different polypore mushrooms, these woodcocks. And these are 100 bees in a cage of different concentrations. We did 10 species to test on toxicity tests. And lo and behold, the red delta polypore that the bears were introducing nearly doubled the lifespans of bees. And the amadou mushroom my hat is made of even did more than that. Those scientists in the audience, please pay attention to the p-values. I'm very big on p-values. All commercial beekeepers in the world feed their bees honey, feed their bees sugar water. And so then with Steve Shepard at Washington University, we began the largest bee clinical study in history. We treated 532 beehives in the almond orchards of California. over 1.2 million beehives concentrate from the almond harvest, all within about 2-3 week period of time. Every almond you consume was visited by a bee. A bee pollinates 1,000 flowers a day. So these results then end up highlighting interesting species. The red-belted polypore introduced by the bears, amadou, which my hat is made of, the light for the portability fire, red reishi mushroom, which I have up here, and chaga, a mushroom that goes along birch trees. So these 3 species we focused on. The preliminary results came back, and the black queen cell virus that infects all queens in the world was reduced by extracts of the mycelium of chaga and reishi more than 500 to 1. Against the deformed wing virus, amadou reduced it 897 to 1. Reishi against the deformed wing virus, 80 to 1. Again, scientists in the room, look at those p-values. This is a scientist's dream come true. Dr. J. Evans said, I've never seen any such strong activity against bee viruses as had with Stamets' extracts. In fact, there are no antivirals against bees. There's nothing out there in the scientific literature on the market to reduce the viruses harming bees. Then at the Lake Sinai virus, also is an inflammatory virus. It's a cofactor causing the death of bees. We reduced the Lake Sinai virus 45,000 to 1. The summary of the activity is we have species specificity against different viruses from these polypore mushrooms that are introduced by bears or woodpeckers or scratches that create cavity environments that make the mycelium pulp the wood. We then invite insects that lay eggs that bring in birds that then peck for the larvae that create a cavity that the flying squirrel and other animals and birds can inhabit. This is a consequential domino effect in the ecosystems of the world. This is orally active. This is an animal clinical study. This is post-ingestion, post the microbiome, post what's called the cytochrome P450 pathway. This is big. Bees are the second most well-studied animal in the world. Obviously, humans are number 1. And yet we all grew up with Winnie the Pooh. We all knew that bears go into cavities where honey bees have it. And it's hiding in plain sight. Everybody missed this. Now, I'm in competition today against big pharmas, big insecticide companies. I'm a strong environmentalist. I have a small company that's growing very rapidly. But I own 100%. I have 97 employees. I created my company in order to research. This is what I'm doing because I'm living my dream. I filed patents. First 5 minutes when I read the patent award, I have to say my ego swelled. And then I said, holy shit, we're Neanderthals with nuclear weapons. The solutions are hiding in plain sight. We all grew up with Winnie the Pooh and no one discovered this. No mention in Japanese, Chinese, German, English, French, whatever language, massive search engines. It took them a year. The patent examiner could not believe that no one had ever discovered this. 200,000 entomologists, 50,000 mycologists. I'm not an entomologist. I happen to be a beekeeper and a mushroom grower. The patent's now been awarded all across the world. Eurasia just awarded yesterday. 15 countries in Europe. I've opened sources for Indonesia, South America, all the developing countries. I kept it for the United States, Canada. Charitable. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. Our Western State University team, and then our team at Fungi Perfecti, we make 55-gallon drums of this. I have 10 beehives. Those of you who know about our product line, I don't pitch a product from stage, but I'm going to make a little bit of an exception at the end. But if you go to vitamin shop and Sprouts and things like that, some of you have seen our end caps. We put up a QR code so you can go buy with an iPhone, and literally takes about 10 seconds. I've tested this. You scan it with your iPhone, and then you can donate money directly to Washington State University with iPay. And to date, I just got the results back yesterday, we have raised $5 million for Washington State University. the soul side of mushrooms. May I establish my son's every credibility here and jeopardize it later? But I am really honored to report we have been published in Nature. I'm the primary author. I've been told only 7% of the articles submitted to Nature get published. It's a very high bar. It was just published on October 4th, just 2 weeks ago. And this morning, we are the #1 article downloaded in the Nature ecosystem of 715 track articles. Natural products based on biodiversity, or microdiversity, if you will, having a broader bioshield of benefits than pure pharmaceuticals with less adverse effects. The complexity of nature, the complexity of the problems that we see unraveling in the ecosystem today can be mended if we rely on the complexity of nature to apply those solutions. We have entered into 6X, the 6th greatest extinction event known in the history of life on this planet, but we're not only the cause of this extinction event, we're likely to be its victim. Think of the numbers here. 8.3 million species on this planet, losing 30,000 a year. Do the math, in 100 years, that's a third of the biodiversity that got us here is disappearing. The ecosystem is literally unraveling all around us. This is a huge crisis. Mycelium, as some of you know, is the immunological network of nature. It sets up the microbiome. More than 8 miles of mycelium per cubic inch. Well, what can you do? Well, one, you can let wood rot. You might have a neighbor who's got a really disheveled yard, and you have this Elizabethan, pure, manicured yard, and spending all this time every week to make it look trim and proper. Celebrate your neighbor, because nature likes complex fractalization faces at different orders of magnitude. The more complex the fractalization faces are, the more niches there are to support different microbes and different other organisms. That complexity of the ecosystem gives us an armamentarium of defenses to respond to catastrophe. So I propose, okay, great results. What do we do? Well, I have a citizen scientist initiative, and this is I've never shown this in public before. So here it is. I invented a citizen scientist bee feeder. You don't all have beehives, but you all have a windowsill. Chicago, New York, Toronto, you can put these on your windowsill. I had an epiphany that bees are maze runners. And they will, it's 5 turns, and then the extract is here, and it's the sugar water with 1%. 1 drop per 100 drops of sugar water, 10 mils per liter. And then the bees have to navigate through, and they get the extract, enriched sugar water, reduces the viruses, and the yellow jackets and hornets and wasps aren't maze runners. We just found out that yellow jackets also are carrying the deformed wing virus, so if they get some of these extracts, that's fine. So, put this together, folks, just for this conference. This was a huge amount of work. It's very short, but here it goes. This is real time. Look how far they're going into the maze. I made the maze clear so kids can look at it. You can explore how deep they're going in there. In and out, in and out. And now you're going to see 2 hours and 20 minutes fast mode. Look at the extracts declining from the bee visits. This is extraordinary that anyone can use this. I can empower everyone in this room. I just gave a talk in Norway. The Norwegian government just ordered 600,000 of them. Take home here is microdiversity, is biodiversity. And think of this, humans, trees, bears, mushrooms, the birds and the bees, all terrestrial organisms have evolved to be interconnected with the mycelial web of life within Earth's natural internet, the foundation of the soil systems. The very same extracts that you saw that reduced viruses in bees, reduced H1N1, swine flu, H5N1, bird flu, herpes simplex 1 and 2, as well as smallpox and other viruses. I think I found something fundamental to the foundation of nature, that the mycelial landscapes upon which we walk control the immunological health of the inhabitants that dwell within. So, I encourage you to engage mycelium, let wood rot, and we're launching this in massive quantities in 2019. We forget just forever. Thank you very much.
Let's make sure each and every one of us go home with this.
One other thing that I forgot to mention. You know how many of you go buy shoes and the company will donate shoes to a poor person? We have set this up, two things. We have set this up so every time someone buys one, they can be connected with a recipient that's on a list that wants to get them for free. In Ethiopia, schools, etc., we'll link them together to the web. We will now have trip meters on the entrances, so we can count how many bees are going in and out. And I'm creating a new cryptocurrency that's tied to the benefits of the bees are getting. It's called the Kumbo. Now here's a quick metric you can check on this. Bees used to fly for 9 days, 9,000 flowers, 1,000 flowers per day per bee. Now they fly for 4 days. That's a loss of 5,000 almonds. 5,000 almonds at 1 cent an almond, are worth a lot more than that, is $50 per bee. I can tie our cryptocurrency with a metric, not like Bitcoin, something that gives ecological benefits so we can be profitable and give to the parents.
So, okay, another thing you need to know about this gentleman. I mean, this is better than Star Trek. When he signed the agreement, he said, in my agreement, at the end of the talk, I need to have a cold beer. Oh, wait. No, this is the best thing. It's okay. You can do it. So, please, but I want to tell you a little story. Peter, you want to come on board? Peter Russell lives with us in the same property. We do it together. It's a beer that Peter and I have. This is a Weiss beer, but that's the best part for a European. We got second place in the Sonoma County Fair. I always saw in the movie that in America there are these pigs with a little thing attached to them. And now it was incredible. So it's an honor to share with you our prize winning beer.